So thinking about what matters to you, who matters to you, why they matter to you, and what you can do to be continually experimenting with different ways of getting things done that serve both your values and your vision of a better tomorrow, your vision of a better future, in a way that serves the interests of the people around you. Trying out new ways of getting things done that allow you to learn more about how you can continue to create change, continue to be pursuing a life that's sustainable, because it works not just for your personal life, not just for your family life, not just for your community life, not just for whatever your professional identity is in whatever phase of life you're in, but for all those different parts.
Welcome to The Ripple Effect, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the minds of Wharton faculty. I'm your host, Dan Loney, and in each episode, we'll be diving deep into the inspiration behind the groundbreaking research that Wharton professors have conducted and exploring how their findings resonate with the world today.
Well, we talk a lot about work-life balance when we're going along in our careers, but should we talk about it even in respect to when we're thinking about retirement? Pleasure to be joined here by Stuart Friedman, who's director of the Wharton Work-Life Integration Project, and he's emeritus professor of management here at the Wharton School. It's been a while. Good to see you.
Great to be here, Dan. Thanks for having me.
I think it is interesting because you have talked so much about work-life balance, but how much do we consider the concept of work-life balance when we're thinking about retirement?
Yeah, I think most people underestimate the shift that occurs in your life as you move from working to not working, although for many people today it's a much smoother, not as radical a shift as it had been in the past, as people are staying more engaged in various kinds of professional or close to professional kinds of activities, even as they age and get into retirement, and then formal retirement of really doing nothing at all. But the parts that are underattended to are important to focus on, because you still have to figure out what does it mean for you to be a leader in the different parts of your life and to create harmony among the different parts. That doesn't go away.
So then when you're thinking about retirement moving forward, there still is a level of balance that you need to have.
Yeah, I prefer to think of harmony or integration, because balance implies the necessity of trade-off. You know, the scales in balance means that to be successful in one part, you have to forsake the other parts. And what I've been focusing on for most of my career is a set of tools and concepts that are based on the idea that looking for harmony or mutual value among the different parts of your life, your work, your home, your community, and your private self, you can find ways of breaking past the notion of balance and towards the idea of where are there opportunities for me to bring the different parts of my life together in a way that are mutually reinforcing, so that what I do in the community enriches my professional life. What I do for myself personally, my mind, body, and spirit, how does that enrich my family and my career and my community? And that's, I think, a healthier way to go about it, as we have found from our research and practice for now over 30 years.
But going back to something you said a moment ago, that dynamic of people, maybe having that 40 or 50-year career, but still having some component of work even after they quote unquote retire.
Yeah.
That's a dynamic that I guess you're carrying a set of learned experiences from over that period of time into that next phase of your life.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Those don't go away. It's a matter of how you're going to apply what you care about and the skills and knowledge that you've accumulated over the course of your life and career. How you're going to bring that into this new phase where you're not as fully engaged in professional pursuits, if you're involved in them at all. So thinking about what matters to you, who matters to you, why they matter to you, and what you can do to be continually experimenting with different ways of getting things done that serve both your values and your vision of a better tomorrow, your vision of a better future, in a way that serves the interests of the people around you. Trying out new ways of getting things done that allow you to learn more about how you can continue to create change, continue to be pursuing a life that's sustainable, because it works not just for your personal life, not just for your family life, not just for your community life, not just for whatever your professional identity is in whatever phase of life you're in, but for all those different parts. And I think that same set of principles holds true no matter what life stage, including and perhaps especially in retirement. Especially speaking from my own personal experience, I'm kind of there now.
Well, I was going to say, you're in that emeritus stage at this point. So how have you seen it play directly as an impact on your life and your career?
In so many interesting ways. I don't want this to be all about, my story, but I've certainly been, paying attention to what's happening in my own evolution. I became emeritus in 2019. And that was the end of my teaching in the full-time in the MBA, full-time MBA and undergraduate programs here at Wharton. I continued to teach in the executive MBA program for the last 5 years, and then last year was my last year of doing that. So I am no longer teaching here. I do have a consulting company where we do training and management consulting to help people use these principles that we developed in Total Leadership, which was the course I'd been teaching here for a few decades, based on what we'd been learning about how to integrate the different parts of life as a leader in all of them. I continue to teach those, bring those to companies, but no longer teaching. And I thought, when I got into this game, when I decided I wanted to be a college professor 45 years ago, it was because I loved teaching. I had a chance to do some teaching when I was young, and I thought, I want to continue to do that. And I anticipated the end of my formal teaching career as something that I would be, anxious about and maybe even depressed about, as many people are when they stop working and that's their whole identity. And it was a big part of how I saw, my value in the world. I don't miss it. And I think that's an important point for people to keep in mind as you're anticipating retirement. The things that you think are going to matter, you got to keep your mind open to what changes in your consciousness as you think about what really matters to you, because those things have shifted for me and for many other people.
So there is a noticeable difference between what is probably the majority of our career to that period of time as we're preparing to make that shift.
Yes, for sure. Now, I'm very fortunate because I've been able to gradually scale down. I've reduced my teaching step by step, not in a planful way. It just kind of happened that way.
You didn't go cold turkey.
No, and that was really helpful.
Yeah.
And I've been scaling up, in doing things that matter to me that are still a part of my professional identity. So I spend a lot of time now mentoring former students, coaching people in the next generation. That's very fulfilling for me, and it's still sort of professional work, but it's it's pro bono, it's fun, and it keeps me feeling relevant.
Is that in part why we see people maybe make a shift in their career later on in that career? Because they know they're preparing for that next phase of life, but they want to find that connection, that something that really, is going to lead them in that right path for that next 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be.
I think that's it. You've hit the nail in the sense that the most important feature of finding harmony among the different parts of life as a leader in all of them is to be grounded in your values, your sense of purpose, the meaning of your life, which is, it's the age-old question, but the answers to those questions change as you grow, as new opportunities emerge, as others, disappear. So looking for something that creates for you a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, value, like you're doing something that matters, is the most important aspect of anticipating and then working through the phase of from full-time work to retirement.
So you talked about having a kind of slowly shift and change with your career, but I think the perception is amongst most people when you get to that time where you're going to leave your work or you're going to retire, that it kind of falls off the cliff.
Well, for some people it does. there's a good friend of mine who's a radiologist, and he just retired. And one day he was working, and the next day he was not. Boom, nothing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
He's not going to conferences. He's not writing papers. He's
Right.
not consulting to the junior people in his world. And that for him, I think it was just a lot harder
Right.
when it is so sudden
Right.
to make adjustments. And my experience, both personally and also just professionally, as I coach other people, as as they're asking new and important questions about how do they find harmony in the different parts of their lives, to be looking at, well, what is it that's going to make my life meaningful?
Right.
How can I use what I've gathered? How can I harvest what I've grown and use it in a way that is helpful to other people?
Right.
I think that's the simple way of thinking about where to find meaning and purpose in your work, in your life, even as you're no longer working full time. And there's lots and lots of ways to do that, of course.
How relatively new then is this concept of thinking about work-life harmony as we head towards retirement? I mean, it feels like a lot of things, it's a relatively new kind of look and understanding maybe within the last decade or two.
That's a great point, because the whole notion of thinking about who you are in all the different parts of your life and how to find ways of bringing them together in a meaningful way. It was not normal to be thinking in those terms when I first started teaching here in 1984.
Right.
There was kind of strict segmentation between your work life and the rest of your life. Indeed,
Right.
when I started talking about work and life in the late 80s here in my classes, there were a lot of people who thought that was not just weird, but inappropriate.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? This is the Wharton School. We don't care about children and families. I mean, I'm paraphrasing
Right,
and
right.
caricaturing, the extreme reaction, but it was not normal. Now, thank goodness, we have progressed to the point where it's standard now, and it's legitimate, and it's healthy and useful to be thinking about how do the different parts affect each other.
Yeah.
And once you start asking those questions, they don't stop, and they continue throughout your life and career.
And in some cases, then there are the external factors that come into play as well. When you think about, what we've seen play out in the last 15 years, the financial crisis, which obviously had people, if they lost a percentage of their 401k, thinking about going back into work.
Yeah.
We've had the pandemic.
Yes.
We're seeing, an impact from the level of inflation that we've seen the last couple of years. So take us through kind of that component of outside factors and how they can play a role in this process of thinking about retirement.
Well, I think the pandemic, as you point out, has had a major shift, along with the advent of new means of communication and the ability to work anywhere, anytime.
Right.
Which that didn't exist when we were kids. Speaking for myself, when we were first starting out. Now, of course, that is normal, and so the need to create meaningful boundaries among and between the different parts of your life, which you have to do, otherwise, one interferes with the other, and
Sure.
you can't get anything done.
Yeah.
That has become much more a matter of psychology rather than the physical nature of separating work and the rest of life. Now it's something that you've got to figure out and then have the skill to be able to negotiate those boundaries with the people
Right.
with whom you're interdependent.
Right.
And so that aspect of how we sort of organize our time and our lives is something that people are learning rapidly. And I think that's a healthy adjustment, but it's not something that that you're born with as a
Right.
skill set. You've got to learn it and develop it, cultivate it, take it seriously.
Is it something that companies even think about when they're thinking about with their employees? Like, companies have taken a larger focus coming out of the pandemic on mental health.
Yeah.
Well, is the element of retirement something that they consider as they're, working with their employees, and their employees are starting to make these decisions or at least start to put those plans in place?
I don't think it's the first thing that they're worried about, but it is, as it's become more normal, more kind of expected to be asking the questions of, well, how are you going to stay healthy throughout your life as an employee? it's natural that you'd start to then extend those questions for older people to what happens after they're gone, especially to the extent that it affects your, if you're just thinking in economic terms, medical expenses and how they carry forward for employers.
Stu, great to see you as always. Thanks very much for your time.
Appreciate being here. Thanks, Dan.
You got it. Stu Friedman, who talks all about work-life harmony. As we mentioned, he is an emeritus professor of management here at the Wharton School.
Thank you for listening to The Ripple Effect. We hope you found this episode informative and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review so that we can continue to bring you the best insight from the Wharton School.